Hello, we are Rick 4 and today we will discuss about the section number 9, a universal minimum income is necessary and desirable in the manufacturing industry. And this is our table of content. In the first one, an introduction to the core theories behind UBI and automation. The second one, our against UBI agreement in manufacturing, reduce labor supply, productivity, and governance risk. And the final one, this is our conclusion. And for the introduction, we will take a look at the definition and characteristic of UPI and also the industry overview about the manufacturing context. Universal Basic Income or UBI is an unconditional cash payment provided by the government to all individuals regardless of their employment status, wealth, or other sources of income. And the cost purpose is to ensure that every individual has a minimum standard of living, with no one falling below the poverty line, especially in an era where automation and artificial intelligence are gradually replacing human jobs and this has five main characteristics. The first one, periodic. This is a monthly payment rather than a one-time brand. The next one, cash payment. This amount will be paid in cash, giving the recipient the freedom to spend on whatever they like. Next, universal. This is paid to all citizens, not just a specific population or those in need. And the fourth one, unconditional, that involve no work requirements or sanctions. Everyone can access to UBI. And the final one, pay directly on an individual basis, not to households, which recognize individual autonomy. And for the industry overview, in the era of 4.0 technologies, the manufacturing industry has undergone a profound transformation, driven by advancement in robotic, artificial intelligence, data analytic, and Internet of Things. These changes have improved productivity and efficiency, but they have also caused significant labor displacement and income polarization. In the research of McKinsey, he estimated that current technology could automate about 49% of manufacturing labor activities, or according to OECD in 2025, manufacturing has seen the most significant decline in labor share of income in advanced economies, dropping by 4.5 percent points. In other words, workers, particularly those with low and minimum level of ability, endure stagnant pay and job insecurities as a result. And at the same time, capital owners profit disproportionately from productivity increase. Automation increased the capital requirements of production while decreasing employment prospect and the wage-based revenue based on the government relied on the finance welfare program such as UBI. In this discussion, we'll go through three main arguments. The first one, UBI is fiscally unsustainable in automated economy. The second one, UBI reduced labor supply and productivity in the manufacturing sector, distorting its efficiency and competitiveness. And the third one, UBI can consolidate centralized power, legitimize political authority, and weaken public accountability.
For the health one, UBI is unsustainable in an automated economy. With the reasoning one is that automation will increase the capital productivities but reduce the wages and labor demand at the enterprise level and lead to shrinking the personal income tax base. So, technologies such as robotics, the AI, and automation could automate it around 30% of the job in the upstream oil and gas operation and 50% of the job competency, improve the extraction efficiency, reduce the errors, and optimize costs. However, it reduced the demand for the manual and semi-skilled labor, like automation and restructuring have cut field employment by 35% as the on-site job replaced by the remote supervision engineers and also automated around 48 to 76% of drilling tasks and 39 to 72% of facility operation. which were the manual and semi-skilled roles. And the global trend estimate that 49% of the working hours could have been automated in the manufacturing industry and 30% in the oil, gas, and logistics sector. We also have the impact on the decline of the labor shares is that as firms increasingly replace the labor with the capital income grows faster than the wages. For example, that if we have one robot, it can replace 3.3 workers. So this raises the productivity by 0.36% per year, but also reduce the average wages by 0.4 to 0.7% per year, along with a lower labor demand. And the outcome here is decline in the labor shares of the GDP, is that the labor share in the advanced economy has fallen by nearly 4% since 97, and also have a sharp decline occurring in manufacturing field, is that 4.5%. So the taxable portions of income from wages, the income tax and the social insurance has been eroded structurally over time. So, as the result, the shrinking revenue from labor taxes and the social contribution is that as the employment and wage income decline, the personal income tax and the social security contribution will also decrease, and the UBI, which require a fixed annual payout for the citizen, regardless of the business cycle, will put the state at risk of long-term fiscal deficits. So the automation reduced the demand for the labor and also lead to shrinking the personal income tax base, one of the two main pillars for funding UBI. So with the reasoning too, the corporate tax revenues is also unstable due to the profit shifting and the tax pay erosions. So the multinational corporate structure will enable the legal profit shifting. As the production depends increasingly on the capital, the technology, and intangible assets, profits can easily be moved across border without relocating the factory. So this makes the corporate tax revenue volatile, unpredictable, and vulnerable to the manipulation. For the mechanisms here at ETP-PS, it's like transfer the patents, the trademarks also vary to the subsidiary in a low tax rate, and the other subsidiary will pay the royalties to you them, so the profit accrue where the taxes are low. The intra-firm prices that are not sitting at market base, for example, a subsidiary in a high-tech country will buy inputs from a low-tech affiliate at inflated prices, so the profit in the high-tax country fall and those in the high tax will rise. And integral financing is that the parent company lends the subsidiary at a high interest rate, so the profit is now from the high tax go to the country with the low tax. So, for the consequence specific in oil and gas, 17% of the wind farm profits from this sector were shifted to jurisdictions such as the Bermuda, Cayman Islands, and the Luxembourg. So, these low-tax, high-secrecy hubs obscure beneficial ownership, make the oversight and taxation nearly zero, and the results exporting country lose tens of billion USD in revenue each year, reduce the tax take, and all multinational manufacturers save 162 billion pounds in profit to countries with low tax rate, flexible transfer practice, and IP patent incentive. So, major economies forward billions in corporate tax revenue annually, and also that cost country about 4 to 10% global corporate tax revenue each year, which is 240 billion in losses. So that as corporate tax receipts fall, the government will lose a key offset for weakening labor tax pay. And if the government tries to raise the taxes, the capital will flow to the lower tax jurisdiction and further reduce the investment in revenues. So the conclusion for both reasoning is that the labor tax pay and the corporate tax pay will erode, and the public finance cannot sustainably support a universal and fixed payment program like UBI.
Let's take the oil and gas industry as a real-world example to show why the UBI is fiscally unsustainable in an automated economy. Automation increases capital productivity, but sharply reduces the wages and labor demand at enterprise level, thereby shrinking the personal income tax base. According to Ernst& Young, roughly 30% of jobs in upstream operation could be automated, and nearly half of job competencies may be replaced by robotics, data system, and AI-based monitoring within the next 2 decades. In other words, more machine and intelligent systems are taking over the roles once done by people. Further evidence from global data also highlights that the upstream oil and gas segments now face a serious skilled labor shortage as automation, digital twins, and predictive maintenance technology reshape the operational roles. Many manual and semi-skilled positions have already been eliminated, while the demand has shifted toward the high-tech and analytical skills. This clearly indicates a structural reduction in employment opportunities for traditional field workers, who were one of the main contributors to income tax and social security system. Because of this shift, with fewer field jobs and lower labor income share, the government collect less income tax and social security revenue from the worker. It directly erodes the domestic tax base that funds social welfare programs. So as automation improves efficiency and profit margin, it also quiets weaken one of the key financial pillars supporting programs like UBI. Now, alongside the shrinking labor tax base, the corporate tax revenue is also becoming unstable due to profit shifting and tax base erosion. As the oil and gas industry becomes increasingly technology driven, a large share of its value now comes from the digital and intangible assets, such as proprietary software, geological data analytics, and AI based monitoring systems, rather than from physical extraction alone. These assets can easily be owned or registered in low-tax jurisdictions, allowing the company to shift the profit across borders with ease. For example, a Reuters investigation reveals that major oil firms, including Shell and British Petroleum, channel billions of dollars in profit through subsidiaries located in offshore tax havens. Shell reported around 2.7 billion USD in profits through Bermuda-based entities between 2018 and 2019, while British Petroleum currency subsidiary held over 6.5 billion USD in cash despite having no employees or real business activity. These structures allow the profit from global operation to be recorded in country with minimal or zero corporate tax, even though the underlying extraction and production occur elsewhere. So the fiscal effect is that even as the production and global profits remain high, the percent taxable at home or in host country keeps falling. The government loses significant corporate tax revenues, undermining their ability to finance large-scale redistribution programs like UBI. Over time, the widening gap between where the value is created and where the profit are taxed make the universal welfare schemes fiscally unsustainable. Ultimately, automation and profit shifting together create a dual erosion of fiscal capacity. Automation shrinks the labor tax base, while profit shifting hollows out the corporate tax revenues. As both income and corporate tax receive deteriorates, the government faces chronic purchase shortfalls and rising debt burden, making a universal basic income program fiscally unsustainable in the long run. And now we move to the thesis 2.
Now, moving on, the second thesis is that UBI may reduce the labor supply and the productivity in the manufacturing sector, distorting its efficiency and competitiveness. And the first reason is the reduced labor supply in hard to replace positions. According to labor market theory, when individuals receive a guaranteed income independent of their employment status, their reservation wages tend to increase. Consequently, workers become less inclined to engage in those hard to replace positions, particularly those with limited upward mobility. So this shift is reinforced when UBI is high enough to cover the basic living needs as the opportunity cost of staying in undesirable positions increases substantially. And the mechanism underlying this is that when the UBI provides a sufficient financial safety net, the worker search intensity declines while their bargaining power strengthens. So this means that workers they can afford to be more selective, avoiding jobs that are tedious, hazardous, or low pay. And in the manufacturing sector, such hard-to-replace positions often require night shift work, machine operation, and production line maintenance. And these roles, especially in the small-scale plants that demand high physical endurance and discipline, but they are often low pay and offer limited opportunities for advancement. Moreover, there are still some simple and repetitive manufacturing tasks that remain hard to automate due to the high cost or flexibility requirements. Therefore, as workers choose to withdraw from these roles, the labor shortages emerge precisely in areas that remain least substitutable by automation. Now, studies provide consistent evidence for this mechanism. For instance, Rowe and Santos research show that when the UBI is set at about 25% of the average total income, the search intensity of workers decreases while their bargaining position is reinforced. Initially, a moderate UBI can push average wages upward as workers demand higher pay for the unattractive jobs. However, when the UBI becomes more generous, the capital accumulation declines and the tax burdens rise. As a result, the average wages eventually fall, especially among the low educated workers who predominantly fill manufacturing, logistics, and manual packing jobs. As a consequence, this creates a dual challenge for manufacturing firms, especially those small and medium sized enterprises. They face recruitment and retention difficulties, and they must also raise the wages to maintain the workforce stability. Ultimately, this dynamic raises the operating costs, reduces the profit margins, and finally erodes their industrial competitiveness.
So going to reasoning number two, rely in work motivation and productivity. Firstly, I will apply the theoretical framework of neoclassical theory, which provides the fundamental framework to analyze how UBI may influence individuals, labor supply decision, and work behavior. According to neoclassical framework, individuals maximize utility by allocating time between labor and which generates income for consumption and leisure. In terms of mechanism, within the neoclassical framework, UBI enter individual incentive structure by reducing the marginal utility of additional work hours. When people receive a guaranteed income regardless of their work input, the relative value of leisure increase, prompting many to work fewer hours or reduce their effort at work, specifically in the manufacturing sector, where productivity and the synchronization of product lines are critical. Even a small group of workers slowing down can disrupt the entire process. Consequently, productivity decline can significantly increase energy costs, machine maintenance expenses, and downtime. In the manufacturing sector, a lack of effort and strict compliance with procedures can lead to human error. According to a report by Siemens, human error accounts for around 17% of downtime incidents in survey manufacturing facilities, which enormously leads to the average annual revenue loss of 11% among Fortune Global 500 companies for firms operating in global competitive markets. Such reduction in efficiency can lead to lost order or force them to raise prices. Overall, through reasoning 1 and 2, by reducing labor supply and motivation, UBI undermines both the quantity and quality of labor in manufacturing, increasing costs, reducing efficiency, and eroding competitiveness. To reinforce the argument 2, we will go to the case of Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend, which is the world's oldest UBI model. Since 1982, the program redistributes part of Alaska oil revenue to all permanent residents through an annual and unconditional cash payment. And each year, on Alaska residents receive about $1,000 to $2,000 payment per person, according to a study. Overall, employment levels did not decline, but the share of part-time workers increased by 1.8 percentage points, which is approximately 17%. Um, this phenomenon reflects a change in labor behavior. Firstly, rather than existing in labor market entirely, individuals reduce work intensity, prioritize their leisure time, and offer lighter and flexible jobs. This shift from full-time to part-time employment was particularly visible in labor-intensive sectors such as um, small-scale manufacturing, retail, manual services, and where the jobs often require like physical effort and involve harsh working conditions. This thing indicate that the reduction in labor intensity and motivation. Furthermore, this behavioral shift could translate into the shortage in labor intensive undesirable position, especially if the UBI level is set high enough to meet the basic living needs.
So I will talk more about the example from oil-rich Middle Eastern countries. So these nations have massive revenue from oil, allow them to provide large subsidies and cash transfer to the populations. Instead of using this revenue to diversify the economic and promote sustainable growth, they might choose to distribute it directly to the people to maintain social stability and avoid protests or social unrest. So these one help the government maintain the power and avoid implementing difficult reform, or while maintaining an image as a government that care for people. In lesson 3, we have three reasonings. So let's jump into the reasoning 1. UBI concentrated exclusive financial power in the state. By design, a national UBI program must be managed and distributed by a central state authority. This concentrates enormous financial power into a hand of state, which assume the role of universal provider. Citizens, in turn, are placed in the role recipient. When the state controls the primary income source for entire population, it gains significant leverage, holding the ultimate power of the purse. This imbalance exists even before any active manipulation, create a power dynamic heavily skewed toward the governing authority. For all, the architecture of UBI itself, regardless of intent, created a centralized power structure by transforming the state into the primary financial provider, establishing the foundation of public dependence.
Okay, so coming with reasons number two is UBI can dampen citizens' sense of social responsibility, weakening social cohesions and governance effectiveness. While UBI aims to ensure basic security, in weak institutional settings it can undermine social cohesions and policy executions. When citizens they shift from contributors to recipients, a cash-only welfare model can make citizens less active in public life. It can roll dependency and lower board productivities and civic duty. With fewer people giving feedback or watching over officials, policies are carried out less effectively. In a good governance view, this clashes with government effectiveness, which in real life depends on social unity. First, lower civic interactions reduce trust. Less volunteering, fewer clubs, and fewer political chats mean fewer real encounters and less mutual understanding. Trust go down. Second, weaken cooperative norms. Shared activities teach reciprocity, responsibility, and respect for rules. Stepping back from public life weakens this norm. And lastly, fraying network. When people leave associations, networks shrink, information flow worse, and coordination is harder. And as social capital falls, policies face more frictions. People trust neither the state nor each other and only cooperate for quick private gain. For example, to secure transfer like UBI, the state then spends more on enforcements, messaging, or pays off, which lower efficiency. And to conclude resistance number two, we can see that UBI can move citizens from contributors to beneficiaries. Civic engagement and social capital drop. With weaker social capital, the state must push harder on enforcement and policy result get worse. Okay, so after resistance number one and resistance number two, we can see that even if the goal is equity, UBI designs can create two-way dependence. The state centralizes financial control, and citizens lose roles in participations and oversight. UBI can therefore push government power and political legitimacies while weakening accountabilities, effectiveness, and social unity. Okay, and the case study we have for this thesis is the Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend, which is the BFD. So, in 1980, Alaska created funds which saved 25% of the oil revenues, and the annual cash dividends from investment returned around $1,000 to $2,000 per resident. For universal payout, there was no income or work conditions, and the goal is to make the residents shareholders to deter corruptions and reserve resources and link back to the thesis. So, firstly, it's about the centralization of power. So, the state they control the fund and payout size. In 2016, during the low oil prices and the budget gaps, the governor Bill Walker cut the dividend in half on his own. There was strong backlash, showing the real power over distribution sits with the executive. Citizens depended fully on that decisions. Second is the politicization. The BFD is a major election issue. Many candidates for governors and the legislators have promised bigger payouts to win votes. A 2019 Public Choice article even frames the BFD as the vote buying, wrapped in social equity language. And lastly is the civic disengagement. A report notes that following public participations in purchase pays, more residents see the state as a payer, not a steward of shared assets, treating government like an ATM instead of a representative to be monitored. And conclusions from this case, even in one of the most successful and transparent UBI model, financial power stay with the government. The citizen-state relationship shifts two-way accountability to one-way dependence, scaling this to whole country, especially in less transparent places. For example, like Venezuela or Nigeria, would bring even higher risks of power concentrations and political manipulations.
Let's move on to the conclusion. In conclusion, UBI represents a human idea that aims to protect people from disruption brought on by automation while distributing the advantages of technology. However, UBI has to confront three main risks in the industrial sector. The first one, economic unsustainability. This is as the result of the swirling tax base due to automation and profit shifting. The second one, industrial inefficiency. Since the labor participation and productivity may decline with guaranteed income, and political deficiency occurs when governments gain excessive power over income distribution. And although universal basic income may seem morally justifiable, its application in manufacturing economies may pose risk to economy, industry, and governments that outweigh any potential advantages. And this is our preference list. That's the end of our presentation. Thank you for your listening.